Hey, Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Thanks so much for being here. Coming up in the next segment, we'll talk about the election day here in California. It's the big recall Gavin Newsom maybe day. So we'll talk about that. And I had a bunch of other stuff planned today, but instead we threw it all out the window because we got to talk about AOCs Dress.
My God, tax the rich. What a model, AOC. What? I didn't know you model as well. Damn.
AOC's Dress, where she chose to go to the Met Gala dressed as a Chick-fil-A bag. My first thought, do we have the side-by-side? You see it, like you even need a side-by-side picture. Jordan Peterson made the point. There it is. That's far too close. Jordan Peterson made the point that the tax the rich on the back of her dress is written like it's drawn in blood for a reason. That tax the rich, that could have been written in any font. There's any number of fonts. Could have put in wingdings. I don't know, you could put any font you want. And it could have been in any color. But that's the aesthetic that they went for. Why? All right, now let's get the obvious point out of the way, and then we'll go deeper where fewer dare to go. The obvious point is the Met Gala is an event at the Metropolitan Museum of Art for the Costume Institute. And people say, this is great, people say it's a fundraiser. And they'll say, oh, it's a fundraiser for charity. So you know what the charity is? The museum, like the Costume Institute in the museum. When I think fundraiser for a charity, I'm thinking we're raising money for pediatric cancer victims or something. I thought this money goes to the local children's hospital. It doesn't. It's a fundraiser for the dresses at the museum. They make about $12 million a year. It's $30,000 a ticket. And this is where people go dressed in the most absurd outfits conceivable, and it's art or something. I don't know. We're supposed to be very impressed with our superiors at the Capitol. There's nothing in America that is more like the Hunger Games than the Met Gala. Right? There's nowhere in the country, nothing. Even you take Obama's party in Martha Vineyard, you take even Gavin Newsom's party at the French Laundry. There's nothing that is more out of touch with the rest of the country than the Met Gala, and they love it. So that's the first of it. So I guess a tag onto that is the rich are already taxed. Right? We have a little graphic here for you about how the top 1%. So it's the top numbers are the income brackets. The first colorful bar are what percentage of income they are, and then the bottom is what percentage of income taxes are paid. So on the far right, the blue, the top 1% make that percent of income, but pay 40% of taxes, and so on. Unfortunately, the top 1% already pay 40% of income taxes tux that I ordered did not get made in time for me to wear it to this year's event. I was either going to wear my top 1% already pay the top 40% of taxes tux, or I was going to wear this peg the patriarchy outfit. But alas, this odd-looking person beat me to it. Do we have my other outfit that I was going to wear, guys? No, not that one. There should be another one with this weird-looking person wearing it's this weird, like, bulletproof vest or something. It says "Peg the Patriarchy" on it or whatever. I don't know. Listen, and the other fact is that 61% of Americans pay no federal income tax at all. Anyway, here's the important stuff, all right? We've got 3 important points here. First, we are told that this is the party of the working class. Do you remember in the beginning of the pandemic, Nancy Pelosi, she was on the James Corden show, and she did a little tour of her kitchen. It was right in the beginning of the whole thing. And the American people got a nice glimpse into Nancy Pelosi's $24,000 refrigerator. And the freezer is full of $12 a pint ice creams. But yeah, the lockdown really affected her. The Babylon Bee, the party of the working class. The Babylon Bee had another one of their prophecies fulfilled. The Babylon Bee is absolutely fantastic. This was back in December of 2020. They had a picture. It was obviously Babylon Bee is a satire website, and it said AOC selling $10 a can tax the rich caviar, or $10,000 a can, tax the rich caviar. And here she is hanging out at the Met Gala, which is pretty much the same thing. Now, you guys showed a picture of this woman wearing a dress that says equal rights for women or whatever. This is the second point, if you could pop that one up. I want to see if you notice anything interesting about this picture here. Once you look past her and this dress or whatever it is she's wearing. Who do you see in the background? The help. What do you notice about the help? The help are the only people there wearing masks. Everyone over the age of 2 has to wear a mask in New York City everywhere you go. That's the rule. But the real rule is that only the little people have to wear masks. And I don't mean little as in short, as in young. I mean little as in insignificant. So here's the deal with masks now. This is incredibly important. Masks are no longer merely a symbol of virtue. That's what they used to be. It used to be, I care more about COVID than you do. For a year and a half, that's what they've been. But look how much I care about COVID. I really, really care about helping people, and I am definitely not a Trump supporter. I care about people. Look how much I care. I wear 3 masks. That's how much I care about people. I wear masks when I go outside. That's how much I care about people. That's what masks have always been. Now masks are different. Now masks are a symbol of power. If you are powerless, let's say a child in school, or a lowly service worker, or the help at the Met Gala, then you have to wear a mask because there's nothing you can do about it. Oh, you want to fight back? You're going to lose your job? Yeah, right. Put the mask on. But if you're powerful, you don't have to. All animals are equal, right? But some animals are more equal than others. It was just a couple days ago. Check out this picture here. I think this was a 9/11 memorial. It may have been a different event. That top picture, that's the group. That's Nancy Pelosi. You can see AOC in the background there. That's them mingling before the cameras arrived. And there on the bottom is after the cameras arrived. The powerful people don't have to follow the rules. It's the second point. Third point is, for AOC, it's all an act. It's very similar to Lil Nas X. Lil Nas X won Video of the Year at the VMAs the other day for his video of giving Satan a lap dance or whatever. And he does this, and then the same thing happened. Like LA Times wrote this whole thing about how conservative and Christian commentators are all up in arms about his satanic whatever. And it's like, no, I get it. I know what he's doing. He's trying to get attention. It's the hardest thing to do. And the most important thing to do in today's world is to get attention, get people's attention, right? So that'll do it. I get it. I know what he's doing. I'm not outraged at him. I'm concerned about the people at the VMAs, the young people there who don't know that it's an act and think it's real and are convinced by it. That's the thing, right? Similar here. This is an act from AOC. And she'll always be the victim. That's part of her act. Surely, today in Twitterland, she'll write some tweet about how she actually is one of the working class. And she had to go to this event so that she could stick it to the rich. And you don't get it, conservatives. You didn't understand what she was trying to do there. She is the working class, and she's fighting the man. And because you were mean to me, you're a terrible person. And then she made herself the victim once again. The truth about AOC is she is a plaything of the rich. She's a plaything. She's a rich elitist's plaything. She is something that the elites, the rich, can use to dangle in front of the working class to pretend like they care. And AOC doesn't mind being used for that purpose one bit. It gets her to the Met Gala, for instance, among other perks, I'm sure. Are you with me? There's no way, if she was actually a threat, that she would be invited to the Met. If she was really a threat to the livelihoods of the rich, there's no way they would invite her in or allow her in. Right? Back October 2020, she was on the cover of Vanity Fair here, and she's been on a bunch of these top fashion magazines, right? A real working class revolutionary, the rich would not put on the cover of their magazine and invite to their parties. Think about it. This is really important. Let me drive this point home. here's the argument that people are going to make. They're going to say, well, of course AOC would wear that dress to the event where all the rich people are. She's one of us. She's a working class girl who got access to this event, and she's really sticking it to the rich, and that's the best place to wear the dress. It's like, yeah, I'd hear that if all the rich people there said, get out of here. We're kicking you out. You're not allowed here. We hate you. That's not what the rich are saying. The rich are saying, oh, you're fabulous. You're a model. Who knew you were a model? Oh, AOC, you're wonderful. We want to put you on the cover of our magazine. They love her. Why do they love her? Why would the rich love her? If she was really going to stick it to them, they would not love her. AOC is loved, not hated by the rich, by the elites. So something doesn't jive there. You with me? Okay. That's all I got about AOC. We spent enough time on her. It's all an act. She's going to do a big pity party about it and get invited to the next party too. Here's what matters. I firmly believe this to be true, and I tell myself this all the time. And I tell myself this especially on the day of the recall election, which we'll talk just a little bit about in the next segment, here in California, where Gavin Newsom's probably going to survive his recall, and he's going to punish the people of California for bothering him. Things are going to get much worse in America. Much, much worse. Like on a scale of 1 to 100, 1 being things are amazing, 100 being things are like dystopian awful, like horror movie terrible. We're like a 6. And I know you think that means I'm like brushing off the terrible things that are happening in America. Like, oh, Slater, you don't care about Afghanistan? No. I care about those things a lot. I'm just telling you things are going to get a lot worse. Way, way worse than they are right now. And the only thing I can do when I look at the face of that future is say, good. Good, because my kids will be ready for it. My kids are ready for it. I'm glad that Lil Nas X won Best Video at the VMAs. I'm glad. Because it's such a sign that our culture is so blatantly evil. It removes all doubt of how my wife and I need to raise our children in our home. There's no question. Like back in the day where I grew up, the VMAs were kind of bad, but not bad enough where anyone thought they were bad, and they were bad. Today, they're so bad, like so blatantly evil, how could you possibly let any child of yours watch what's happening here? And that's good, because you can raise your kids to be not of this world. It's more obvious. And the harder things get in this country, the more our country and our culture will need Jack, Grace, and John, my 3 kids, who are right now 4, 3, and 1. But I'm raising them with that mindset. This is a broken culture that will need them. They sure don't need the culture, right? Most kids grow up thinking they need culture. No. We don't need the culture. It's garbage. The culture needs them. You raise your kids with that mindset, and that's a good thing. A bunch of people have told me recently that they don't want to have kids. They don't want to bring kids into the world. First of all, people have always brought kids into the world. Slaves brought kids into the world, knowing their kids would be slaves. People like in the worst conditions for thousands of years, living in abject poverty 1,000 years ago, had kids, right? You always have kids. Like, who do you think? You think things are so bad now that you can't bring a kid into this, right? Like, yes, you can, and you must. Because we need more people like the kids you will raise, right? We need more people like you in this country. So I'm encouraging you to have many kids. Don't stop having kids. Don't stop at 2 or 3. Have as many kids as you can pop out. I read somewhere the other day that someone making the argument that it's good that America gets sick every once in a while. It's good for America to get sick every once in a while. Long periods of prosperity and ease, it's not good for you. And you know it on a personal level too, right? If like you go on a vacation, if vacation's good, you rest, you unwind. Like a couple days in, you're like, I feel kind of lazy. Like, I gotta get back to work. You're made to work, right? Ease and comfort, it's not a good thing. It's good to face the occasional, it's good to face the constant pressure, like a little bit of pressure in your life. And it's good even to face an occasional tragedy. because it reminds you of who you are and it reminds our country of who we are. So this person, he starts off talking about how America was made through trial. Even the attempts to colonize this country. When we had entire colonies die off, like the whole colony's dead. Everyone dies. It disappears. The whole colony disappears. Right? That happened a couple times. Then we have the Revolutionary War, which was this insane gamble. These guys were madmen, our founding fathers. Insane gamble against the strongest military in history. So we amazingly win that one, barely. Right? I remember we did a special a while back about Washington crossing the Delaware. And there were 3 different groups that went across, but only one made it, Washington's, and like barely made it. And that was the turning point of the war. And there were many other moments like that. You're like, well, how did we possibly win that? So we win. And then just a couple of years later, the War of 1812, the British invaded and they lit the White House on fire. They invaded Washington, D.C. It was pure chance that we even made it out of that war. Brian Kilmeade has a wonderful little book. It's just in short. It's called Andrew Jackson and the Battle of New Orleans. Fantastic book. Such a minuscule chance that we won that battle and therefore won the war. Then we had the Civil War, of course, it was awful. And since then, we've had no war fought on continental American soil. Of course, Pearl Harbor and 9/11. And the world wars were terrible, awful, but nothing fought here in America. And World War II was a long time ago. So this person goes on and makes the point that what we have with COVID, or what does this have to do with COVID, that we haven't faced a civilizational crisis in 80 years in America, since World War II. And now we're finally facing one with COVID, and we are responding exactly the way that you would expect of people who have grown soft to respond. Now, you may be bristled at what I just said. It's not a civilizational crisis. A virus with a 99.98% survival rate is not a civilizational crisis. Smallpox, as we talked about yesterday, had a 30% fatality rate. This has a 0.02. So this is not a civilizational crisis, but we're sure acting like it. Why? Because we're pathetic. We've forgotten completely who we are. And we gladly hand over our liberties for comfort and for protection. These liberties that were hard won and extremely fragile. 80 years has made us fat, lazy, and so easily deceived into believing that everything we have is free. We're the spoiled rich kid. We're the spoiled rich kid who squandered his inheritance and then gets mad at daddy when all the money's gone. We think it all just appeared. And that person is worthless. That rich trust fund baby, Gavin Newsom, sorry, totally worthless. Is a worthless human being. And we have sold our birthright for comfort in America. And the truth is, you got to get sick before you can get better. And what a wake-up call to raise your kids to be the people who can make a sick America healthy again. I want to tell you about another book that just came out. Brand new book. #1 New York Times best-selling author, Vince Flynn, Enemy at the Gates. It's a Mitch Rapp thriller. All of these are New York Times bestsellers. Enemy at the Gates. When the lines between the government and the elite are blurred, who can America trust? These books are way too realistic. You want to know how the deep state works? You want to know how the CIA operates? I don't know how these guys get this stuff so accurate. Amazing stories, but also a glimpse into our future, unfortunately. Enemy at the Gates by Vince Flynn. It's available now wherever books are sold. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. So I live in San Diego. It's very nice here, but it's oppressive as well. And today's our big, hopeful recall the governor moment. And I don't think it's going to go well, but I'm keeping hope alive. And if you live in California and you haven't voted yet, please do. Now, when you do go vote in person, you will have a very good chance that you'll get there and the polling person will say, sir, madam, you've already voted. And then you'll say, no, I have not. And what happened is someone stole your ballot and they voted. They were kind enough, generous enough to vote on your behalf. They know how busy you are. They know how life is just, it's been a lot going on in your life lately. So they took it upon themselves to vote for you. Isn't that kind of them? I wish I knew who voted for me so I could write them a little thank you note, thanking them for doing that. So you may be encountered with that in California. Many people already have. This is a report from KTLA in Los Angeles.
Got there at 10:30, gave her this, and she scanned it and said, "You voted." And I said, "No, I haven't." And she said, "This has been happening all morning." The man next to me was arguing the same thing. So as I left, I did the provisional ballot. I asked the couple, the young women that I talked to, and I said, "Are you by any chance Republicans?" She said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, so am I. And so are the two friends that had the problem at VFW." So.
Makes you suspicious.
I would think so. And still, I'd like to know how I voted.
Amazing. It's like you say it's a fraudulent election, then you get kicked off YouTube. You know what I mean? But like, what else could it be? You sent out, there's 40 million people who live here. Every registered voter gets a ballot. Almost no one in California knows there's a recall going on. Yoink some ballots out of mailboxes. Those people don't even know that it was stolen because they don't even know what's going on. Listen, of course there's that fraud. Of course. If you think that an election like this, that cheating in an election is beyond a person's moral ability, right? That no one in a state of 40 million people would ever dare in a governor's election that has tons of money and power and influence wrapped up in it. No one would ever cheat. It's too important, Slater. No one at the teachers union or any of the unions or anyone else with billions of dollars on the line, no one else would ever, no one would cheat ever in that situation where there's just millions of ballots floating out all over the state and where campaigns used to be to see which candidate gets the most vote, and now it's which campaign can collect the most ballots. There's no way anyone would ever cheat in that, Slater. I don't know what to say to you if you're that person. I don't want to be rude, but like you have such a naive view of human nature. I don't even know how you function, quite frankly. And the only reason that whoever stole that lady's vote got found out is because she then went to go vote. Most people's ballots that were stolen, they won't even know that their ballots were ever stolen because they don't even know there's a ballot to be stolen. It's going to be very hard for Larry Elder to overcome that fraud today, but we'll see. All right, let's 8 o'clock Pacific time. We'll have an answer, more or less, on that. So let's go to COVID here. Question is in this segment, why are health officials not talking about health, and why are they not talking about natural immunity? A couple facts I want to share with you. First, Yale, Harvard, and Stanford, they have a joint effort. This website's called covidestim.org, E-S-T-I-M, covidestim.org. They have all the data you could possibly imagine. And they estimate, Yale, Harvard, Stanford, not right-wing rags, they estimate that 165 million people in America have had COVID and recovered. That's a ton of people. The entire point of vaccines are to try to replicate the natural immunity that 165 million people already have. And the fact that the vaccine pushers completely ignore natural immunity is all you need to know, that this has never really been about health. It's never really been about health. It's about power and money. And you throw the big pharmaceutical companies in there, how much money do you think Pfizer has made and will continue to make when they push booster shots and twice-a-day COVID pills for the rest of everyone's life? You kidding me? You say, oh, no, Slater, you're way too cynical. It's about stopping the spread. Oh, the Democrats are so adamant about stopping the spread. Are they? This is Ducey over at Fox News talking to the White House spokesperson.
Requirement for people at a business with more than 100 people, and it's not a requirement for migrants at the southern border. Why?
That's correct. Go ahead.
I know that with enforcement, employers who refuse to
I love that.
vaccine
Stop that.
rules.
I love that clip because she just can't even compute it. He asked a question, why do they not check at the southern border, but they do for business? And she didn't answer why. She just said, that is correct. She couldn't even come up with an answer. Because of course it's not about health. This is an interview with Fauci. This is May 2019. So this is pre-COVID. Pre-COVID. Here's Fauci in some interview.
To prevent getting an infectious disease and having to have you as my doctor is what? wearing a mask.
No.
Telling you to do that. If I can see they're getting ready to sneeze or cough, walk away.
You avoid all the paranoid aspects and do something positive. A, good diet. B, you don't smoke, I know. I know you don't drink, at least not very much, so that's pretty good. Get some exercise. I know that you don't get as much exercise as you should.
That's correct.
Get good sleep. I think the normal, low-tech, healthy things are the best thing that you can do, David, is stay healthy.
All right.
That's Fauci sounding like Joe Rogan. Now, of course, that was pre-COVID. You can be like, oh, Slater, things have changed. The context of that interview, that was the very end of a 30-minute interview. That was entirely about the bubonic plague and the worst plagues and viruses in all of history. And then the guy ended with, what can I do to protect myself? And Fauci's answer was, be healthy. But there's none of that talk today. None of it. They don't utter a word about being healthy, living a healthy lifestyle, naturally boosting your immune system. Here's foods you should eat. Get outside, get some vitamin D, get some exercise, lose some weight. They never talk about that. If anything, they mock that. Why? Why is it only the paranoia and nothing about health? Even if our health experts did both, right? Even if they said, hey, everyone, get the vaccine, and also here's some things you can do to live a healthier lifestyle and have a stronger immune system. You don't hear any of that. It's just vaccine. Why? Let me say one thing, and then I'll answer that question. There's this guy, Aaron Kheriaty or something. He's a professor of psychiatry at UC Irvine, University of California, Irvine, and he's a professor at the UC Irvine School of Medicine. And he's on a bunch of COVID task forces for the University of California system. And he's actually suing the Board of Regents. He's suing the University of California over vaccine mandates. His argument is that immunity should count as well. Natural immunity should count as well. He says there doesn't seem to be any rational basis for discriminating against my form of immunity and requiring me to get a different form of immunity, which is a great way of looking at it. Because that's what it is. Hey, you got to get vaccinated. Why? You need immunity. I already got it. No. Your form of immunity, that's not good enough. You need this form of immunity. Actually, my form's better. Check out these numbers here. And I know numbers are hard on the TV and the radio here. Because some people will say, okay, sure, fine, maybe natural immunity is great and stronger and lasts longer, all that. But it's got to be better to be double protected, right? Why not? Why not just get double protected? You have the immunity already from you got the disease and recovered, and now you get the vaccine on top of that. It's not better. The largest study ever done on this. They took a giant group of people who have already been infected and survived COVID. They gave half of that group a 1-dose Pfizer booster, and they gave the other half of people nothing. The group who got nothing, no other shot, just natural immunity, their immunity was 99.74%. Hard to improve on that, right? The booster group, the group who got a shot afterwards, their immunity was 99.86. So that's a 0.08% improvement over the people who did not get a booster versus the people who did. That's nothing. So what does that mean statistically? It means you would have to vaccinate. See if you follow this number. It's a crazy number. You would have to vaccinate 883 people who've already had COVID, right? So they've had COVID and recovered. You'd have to vaccinate 883 of those people in order to prevent one asymptomatic reinfection. An asymptomatic reinfection. Now, so what's the point? Who cares? It's an asymptomatic reinfection. Doesn't mean anything. Why would you want to vaccinate anyone to prevent that, let alone almost 1,000 people? Now, the latest data also says that there's an adverse effect 1 out of every 11 vaccines. And an adverse effect could be anything. It could be sore arm. It could be a fever. If you've gotten the vaccine, you know a lot of people say the second dose, like some people have been in bed all night. They had chills all night. It was a bad night, right? So when you vaccinate, and that happens to 1 out of 11 people, when you vaccinate 883 people to try to prevent that one asymptomatic spread, you're going to cause 75 adverse events. Ranging, right? And Bell's palsy may be one of them, but also, I got sick that night. But is it worth it? There's no such thing in life as solutions, only trade-offs. So is it worth taking all the people who are immune, who already have antibodies, vaccinating 883 of them to prevent one asymptomatic case when you're going to cause harm to 75 others? Is that worth it? Of course it's not. So what's going on here? And we got to run. I got some great guests, but what's going on here? I got 2 suggestions. One less conspiratorial, one a little more conspiratorial. The less conspiratorial one is that Americans have an obsession with medicine. I read an article from a neurobiologist the other day at Stanford. It says 25% of students aged 16 to 32 take Adderall illegally, and 35% of students in that age take it legally. So you're somewhere around 60% of students take Adderall or other amphetamines. 60% are taking very serious drugs regularly, between 1 to 7 times a week. So we are just a culture that's all about taking medicine all the time. And I think our vaccine obsession is just that, as opposed to overall health. Second thing, here's the more conspiratorial side. If the vaccine is only taken by half the population is vaccinated, half the population is not, then you got a control group. You got a control group in those who aren't vaxxed. If something bad happens in the vaccine with the people who have the vaccine, there's a control group, right? So let's say a bunch of these people have a bad thing happen. Well, the control group, it didn't happen. So you could blame the vaccine. But if everyone's vaccinated, there's no longer a control group. So if a bad thing happens because of the vaccine, you can say, well, it's not from the vaccine. It could be any number of things because there's no control group anymore. You with me? That's a little more conspiratorial, but I'm down with it. We'll end with this. We keep doing things that range from harmful, as we just described, to useless. This is an Oxford epidemiologist.
What really astonishes me and has completely flabbergasted me throughout this pandemic is the absolute certainty with which scientists and politicians insist that certain things work, like mask mandates, even though if you look at the data, I think it's absolutely clear now that mask mandates make no difference.
I don't know. She seems like a big Trump supporter. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, a wonderful article in The Atlantic, of all places. David Zweig is his name. He's been doing a fantastic job covering COVID. And the latest is he's defining what hospitalization means, right? We always see, first of all, we've talked before about even calculating deaths is difficult. Did you die with COVID or from COVID? But even calculating hospitalizations has a lot of nuance to it that we're missing. Dr. Nan Hayworth is here from the Independent Women's Foundation and first female doctor to serve in Congress as well. Nan, how are you?
I'm well, thank you, Mike.
Good to talk to you. Yeah, so give us what David figured out here. What are we digging down to?
So the upshot of David Zweig's piece, which remarkably is in the Atlantic, not known for its necessarily known more for its being in something of a lockstep with the left's agenda, is that essentially upwards of half of the hospitalizations and this he's quoting a large study that has just been brought into pre-publication, but upwards of half of those hospitalized with COVID or for COVID, purportedly, that's the way they're talked about in the general discourse, let's say, actually have only mild illness or have COVID within them, but were admitted for something else. So that's a very important definition indeed, or clarification of what we're talking about if we're using hospitalization as a metric for, the disease burden of COVID, basically.
You're right. There's not enough nuance in that definition, right, where I think everyone assumes the worst, right? When you hear someone's hospitalized because of COVID, you assume the worst. And now I've seen stats where they break it down: hospitalized, ICU, ventilator. So there's a little breakdown there. But even in the hospitalized group, the argument is that, of course, you got someone with the appendix needs to be taken out and they happen to have COVID. But the other thing I want to focus here is a lot of these people just come in with what type of ailment and how long are they there for?
Right. Well, exactly. And what are the motivations to assert or put in their diagnosis list that they have COVID? There have been remunerations made to hospitals based on a COVID diagnosis. So that certainly is an incentive for them to include COVID among the list of diagnoses for patients who are hospitalized. But for example, people are hospitalized for observation because they have COVID or have been found to have COVID and they're short of breath. But in fact, their blood oxygen level is not in any way at a critical deficit. There are a lot of those sorts of admissions. There are indeed people who are admitted for other conditions, as you say, like appendicitis or a heart attack, you name it, who are found on admission testing to have COVID. Well, now they come, they go into the COVID basket. And of course, these statistics are used to extract more compliance out of the American public for various initiatives, including most conspicuously, of course, mandates for masking, even mandates for vaccination. And of course, the extortion division of the Democrat Party, namely the education industrial complex, uses these statistics, these massaged, distorted statistics, to extract more resources, which then, get shunted politically toward the Democrat Party.
It's unbelievable that people are going along with all this. Let me ask you a question as a doctor as well. Our special on Friday is about the mandates, the vaccine mandates. And we're going to talk with the Alliance for Defending Freedom and a pastor about religious exemptions that some hospitals and airlines, and I'm sure other businesses, are not accepting. They're not accepting religious exemptions at all. So we're going to talk about the legality of that. But what about a medical exemption? If someone were to get a medical exemption for the vaccine, does it work? Does an employer have to honor that? And can the state come after doctors for daring to do such a thing?
Well, certainly I have seen legal commentary in recent days citing precedents that did require that those making mandates accept and respect medical exemptions and religious exemptions. Like that really should be something that in the United States, we honor. But it sounds to me, Mike, as though there are going to be a lot of legal proceedings surrounding mandates and who has the authority to make them. I know you're going to talk about them in great detail on Friday. It seems obvious to those of us who want to respect individual autonomy that even simply preferring not to have a vaccine for whatever personal reason you may have should be honored, especially given that this is, even if you want to consider it from the standpoint of a crisis, a public health threat. Fortunately, this is not Ebola virus. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't take COVID seriously in the same way that we take influenza seriously. These are respiratory viruses that can hit some people extremely hard. But what we don't hear about, except from Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida, America's best governor, in my humble opinion, is that we do have means of mitigating the course of disease for those who, whether vaccinated or not, develop a severe case of COVID. We have therapeutics of many sorts. Let's increase the awareness of and access to those therapeutics, including monoclonal antibodies, which are a potent defense for those who contract COVID.
Not if they're obsessed with the vaccines, which they most certainly are. Dr. Nan Hayworth, Independent Women's Forum, former Congresswoman in New York. Thank you, Ms. Hayworth. Dr. Hayworth.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Anytime.
Have a great day. We'll do it again. Let's talk about Afghanistan. Again, the left wants us to stop talking about it. We won't. We'll do that next. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. So Joe Biden and the media obviously want us to move on from Afghanistan, but we will not. There was a hearing yesterday with the Secretary of State there. I didn't watch a lick of it, but our next guest did. Robert Wilke, former VA Secretary, is now visiting fellow at Heritage and U.S. Air Force Reserve Colonel. Mr. Wilke, how are you, sir?
I am fine, Mike. It's always good to be with you.
Really good to talk to you. I did not watch the hearing. You did? What's the big takeaway we need to know?
I watched some of it. Well, the big takeaway is that we have an administration that is not accepting responsibility, surprisingly, for, I think, the greatest military and foreign policy disaster since the fall of Saigon. We had a Secretary of State who said that they were absolutely powerless to change an agreement that President Trump entered into well over a year ago. I would point out that that was a conditions-based agreement that was based on certain things coming from the Taliban, and that upon Joe Biden entering office, the Taliban broke all of those agreements. And it borders on, it's more than disingenuous, it's dishonesty. When they say they couldn't change it, well, they've changed Trump international agreements on immigration, on climate, on trade, but they couldn't come around to fix this one. I think my friend General Keane was absolutely right yesterday. This is all on Biden. Trump didn't arrange this withdrawal. He didn't give the military instructions or the State Department instructions to abandon our embassy. He didn't give the State Department instructions not to take an accounting of the Americans in the country. And just to finish this loop, it's not just us on the conservative side who have raised the alarm about Mr. Blinken and his faculty lounge gang. It was John McCain, of all people, who said that back in 2014 that Mr. Blinken was a threat to national security. And I think you see today in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, both the chairman and the ranking member saying that same thing.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it was, he gave a passion speech, McCain did. He's like, I don't know if I've ever done this before, but he must not appoint a Blinken to this position. And alas, here he is. I don't know how much you know these people in particular, the ones who are there and have interacted with them professionally or not. And I'm not asking you to comment on them specifically, but maybe even just these type of people. Do they care? And I mean, are they losing sleep? Are they depressed? Are they like, if I did something like this, like I do something silly at work that may inconvenience someone and I'm all broke up about it, I can't sleep at night. Like these people did a horrible thing that resulted in Americans and Afghans dead and deep betrayal and everything. Are they hard-hearted enough where it doesn't bother them? Is there like a professionalism, like a stoic professionalism that they need to have to distance themselves? How do you make sense of that as a human?
Well, I think you have to look back at history. I think they believe that they are mistakenly the inheritors of the best and the brightest who got us into Vietnam, forgetting what the outcome of the best and the brightest activities were. They come from that same mindset. But you have to remember that these are folks who are not proud in talking about America. And I use Mr. Blinken as an example. And you and I have talked about it. When he was harangued by the Chinese foreign minister back in March on our soil in Alaska, and the minister just read back Joe Biden's woke critique of the United States. All Blinken could do was say, we have imperfections. Now, if you had been sitting on the other side of that table, or Nixon or Reagan or Trump, the answer would have been, we're not going to be lectured by a country that has murdered 100 million of its own people since 1949. But that is the mindset here. If they can't stick up for America rhetorically, they're not going to do it kinetically. And this is the byproduct of that mentality. Remember, Joe Biden himself opposed the one good foreign policy action of the Obama administration, which was to take out Osama bin Laden. He stood in the door and said no to that, and he was thankfully overruled. I'll give you one quick history lesson. 1975, Vietnam, the North Vietnamese broke Paris Peace Accords, invaded conventionally the South. They were exposed. They were out in the open, thousands of troops, hundreds of tanks. Jerry Ford wanted to send the Air Force in to crush them, but post-Watergate, he needed the approval of Congress. Who blocked that approval in the United States Senate? Joseph Robinette Biden. A few months ago, the Taliban were in the open. They were exposed. American air power could have devastated them. Who said no? Joe Biden. So we are seeing this continuum that began in the 1970s, where he is diametrically opposed to any use of American power or for standing up for our country. And last thing, real quick.
10 seconds. Yep.
Trump didn't render the NATO alliance asunder. Merkel, Macron, and Johnson said it was Joe Biden, who didn't even have the decency to tell them he was pulling out. And Britain lost 450 Marines and soldiers in Afghanistan.
Let's spend more time next time, Colonel. Grateful for you.
Look
Robert
forward
Wilke, Heritage Foundation. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word.